perfect condition, storing at 55 degrees and high humidity in a dark place, 10 days max. But it's almost true that it continues to improve. Ernesto Ely, that was his big thing. The Ely's, you put it in the pressure can with 3 atmospheres of nitrogen, and you age it. And there's another guy named Andre Trinchi, a roaster that invited me to E-Cafe. He believes in aging. It is bullshit. If you take that can and open it, it's really good for a couple of hours, and then it's like the vampire. At the end of the movie, he gets stabbed, and he was handsome and everything. He just turns this old wretch, and you're like, oh, God, that's bad, and then he does, the same thing. The coffee knows how old it is, and it goes fast, okay? There is no substitute for freshness ever, all right? Yes, sir. He asks what my attitudes or ideas on quenching are for cooling. It works pretty well, but you got to be so precise. You can't have any water remain. And quenching is the idea of spraying water over the bean. We played with that quite a bit, and I'm an air cooler and a small roaster. It's a very small artisan company. I'm very selective on wholesale. I say no a lot. They call me up, well, I've got a blah blah machine. I say, you want a slightly darker roast? Why don't you go with Eddie at my house? Because your roast is going to taste better on that machine, okay? Because I don't care to roast a whole lot of coffee here. What I care to do is to perfect this as an art, and I'm also kind of interested in perfecting the coffee shop as an art form. The best enjoyment of my customer is my daily goal. I'm very customer oriented. Okay, now here's the meat and potatoes of this lecture. On the left, you see a bean that is pre-first pop. And I apologize, the photograph is not quite as definitive as I want. We did the best we could. I had a few days to throw this together because I'm also kind of busy. I run a company of 50 people and blah, blah, blah. My excuse this. But I wish these photos were a little sharper. But you see second crack begin. So the coffee on the left is second crack. Looks a little lighter. It may have a little white stuff in the seams, a little line. That is dominated by citric acid. As second crack begins, citric acid begins to drop off. And this is a Harar Makeda. I'm showing you an actual bean and the actual profiles that I have experienced. So as citric acid drops off and second crack begins, caramelization, the brown phase, begins. Caramelized sugars peak out on this particular bean in about the center of second crack. And you want to play with it. Literally each crop is different that I get from the Harar region. And Harar is a collective. The Makeda is a region where a bunch of coffee experts, they sit around and they grade the coffee and they mix the green and they send it out, and they're very good at this. And I've never had an acid problem. Now, I mentioned that not every bean works well for my blend, and that is a bean of 90% of the coffee in the world, South America, particularly Hawaii, a lot of coffees are too acidic, which means that as my caramelization begins, I still have a heavy citric acid content. You can't caramelize while citric acid is dropping off. And in the bean, the caramelized sugars are protected. You can smell them. As soon as it makes a liquid, the acid attacks the sugars and they're gone. All right? This is my thesis for this whole talk. If you're going to roast espresso, the citric acid must not be present, the lemony brightness, when you taste your coffee, because it will destroy caramelized sugars and varietal tones. All right? So with this coffee, it's a low acid Arabica, which means to my roast, sweet roast, because again, I'm like a little baby. I just like sweet things. I can use almost any Harar Makeda, and at my degree of roasting, which is Northern Italian, peak caramelized sugars, it's a deep red brown bean, no oils on the surface, that bean works. Any Hawaiian, Guatemalan, Colombian, all these coffees, they're still far too acidic when I reach what I think is the peak of caramelized sugar. And this is the essential part of this lecture. Well, the caramelized sugar's in there, but as soon as you liquefy it into an espresso, it mixes, destroys the sugars. The acid destroys the sugars, okay? So they can exist together in a bean because they're sitting in a solid, all right? A roughly solid. As soon as you liquefy through extraction, the acid attacks caramelized sugars and varietal nuance, in this case blueberry, dark chocolate, and a little bit of honey, which I like in a Harar. Now, as caramelized sugar content peaks and begins to drop off. It drops off because it carbonizes. And I've always thought that was kind of amusing. The carbonize and caramelize are so close in words and completely different. Carbonize means burn, all right? You're burning it. Now, this is where it gets to be a matter of opinion. In Italy, when I was in the Firenze is in the middle of Milan. In Milano, in Italy, they all have Northern Italian roasts, and they're doing it to various degrees with their equipment of preserving those sugars into a cup for you. But if you go to Firenze, then they're a little darker. They're like the second to the right cup on my screen. You can start to see the darkness creep in. That's because in Firenze, they like a little more bitter in it. You go to Naples, you've got a little bit more, all right? A little bit more darkness of the bean, more sugars are carbonized, less sugars are in their caramel state. That's what they like. This is completely legitimate. I have a theory that I could say I have a degree in anthropology, and one of the things I thought was cool was that people from very cold climates have always been able to preserve their meat in snowbanks, and they have very soft palates. People that preserve their foods over the millennia, thousands and thousands of years using spices, have a palate that's bittering, tastes sweet to them, all right? So you've got a spectrum. As caramelized sugars carbonize, you have different relationships in the cup. Some find it desirable to have more bittering. And like I say, I allow them to live, but I vigorously defend my coffee as the best thing in the world. Actually, I don't. I'm actually kind of open-minded about it, I hate to admit, except for acidity. And so the cup second to the right, almost second crack is almost done. You have a lot more carbon. I don't like it. Question, sir?
Yes. Could you speak for us a little bit more about what you mean by middle of second crack?
Sure.
Let's just say for a minute that we've got X amount of beans.
Yeah.
Some have gone in second crack, some are not got there.
Right. It's second crack, think of it like a crescendo, and all the instruments are coming, they're warming up, and then you hear the big peak, and it drops off, and so it's by ear, but also by time. If your second crack starts at 14:30 on your clock and finishes at 15:05, the middle would literally be the time. And I'm using that without a lot of chemistry knowledge. All my knowledge is empirically based, trial and error with a heavy emphasis on error. I like to say that. And so my understanding of second crack is intuitive, layman's, gee, it's right in the middle, by time or by the sound. I roast by ear. I can tell the development of each bean by the way it sounds. And then I put that in my computer. I take what my sample roaster teaches me, I bring it to the computer, I lock it down, we make some batches and see how it works. But just that simple, a linear division of second crack. So as you get darker, the bean on the right, second crack was almost done, a few little cracks in. That was the first whiff of burnt rubber coming out of that sample roaster. I stopped it and I want to show you the picture because when you have the burnt rubber dominating, then you have the opposite situation. If you have some caramelized sugars and some varietal notes such as blueberry, chocolate, or honey that make it through to that point, the carbon won't destroy them. It masks